noontide from sunny Honolulu, and welcome to people all over the mainland and to Canada. Welcome especially you nice Canadians. My name's Howard Wigg. I'm with the Hawaii State Energy Office, and I have the honor of being president of IES Hawaii and Dark Skies International Hawaii. And I'm here to say that the world is on fire. We're losing another species of life each and every day, and our kids very rarely have a notion of what those stars are. Stars? What stars up there? So today we are tackling all three problems all at once. So incidentally, the world is on fire because mainly of increasing CO2 levels, which is caused by the burning of more and more fossil fuels. And Hawaii Energy Office led the nation in declaring that by the year 2045, all the electricity produced would be clean energy. And we've since ratcheted that up to say that by year 2055, Hawaii will be a decarbonized economy. No carbon production. Very, very ambitious. Other states followed us, let alone Hawaii did it all. So I am president of IES Hawaii, but the ominous reasons, the power behind the throne is Hawaii Energy's own Lily King, who will do the official opening. Take it away, Lily.
I'm so glad to see so many familiar faces. I'm the Vice President for Illuminating Engineering Society, Hawaii chapter, and this workshop or online workshop is actually made possible by Hawaii Energy. February is halfway through into the program. We have a lot of exciting news from Hawaii Energy, like the energy relief grants has benefited a lot of the nonprofit organizations as well as the smaller businesses. And then we have the Power Move program. It's actually a bonus program that help reduce the utility peak demand. At the same time, help accelerate the, of course, what Howard has said, decarbonize the clean energy goal by 2045. At the same time, the Power Move program is more for the bigger businesses. In the meantime, for our custom projects like lighting with the controls, these are very potential type of customized projects and project assistance, not just for the retrofit projects, but also for the new construction as well. So we have a lot of information at hawaiienergy.com. And at the same time, with that whole group of Hawaii Energy team here, we have Melissa Onishi, we have Daniel, we have Chase McDaniel, and then we have our executive director in the back, Caroline Carl. And if you would like to talk stories after this seminar, please feel free to touch base with them. And with no further delay, I would like to go ahead and introduce
most important, Hawaii Energy picked up the tab for the lunch.
So with no further delay, I would like to invite Tina Halfpenny, who is the Executive Director of ELC, and she's going to be the moderator to kickstart this exciting panel discussion. Thank you.
I am very happy to be here. I'm very excited to be having this conversation today. Light pollution is something that we are all familiar with. I think we've all sort of recognized the changing night sky. However, there's not a lot of clear solutions for us on how to deal with light pollution. And I am new to Hawaii. However, it's a very special place, and I think the story of light pollution and how light pollution is impacting the Hawaiian Islands, which are the most remote, for everyone who's online, most remote island in the world, is really unique. However, the implications of outdoor lighting are not entirely unique to Hawaii. So we're going to
speak up. I can't hear you online.
Thank you. Post-COVID, it's frightening to use microphones, but here we go. So I want to introduce each of our esteemed panelists, and then we are going to hand it off. After each of their presentations, we are going to go through a Q&A. I've got a couple of housekeeping items. As I mentioned, this presentation is being live streamed and recorded. We hold questions until the end. For those who are online, please use the question pane. I think there's a chat pane and a question pane. Please use the question pane. We'll be monitoring that. We'll answer them as we go when we can. Otherwise, we will be directing questions to the panelists after the presentations. And if you are interested in receiving AIA learning credits, be sure you have signed in and see Jordan for more information. So our first panelist is Richard Wainscope with University of Hawaii. Richard is an astronomer. He came to Hawaii to work on the observations on Mauna Kea and Haleakala. My glasses, sorry. His research focused on near-Earth objects, which are asteroids and comets that come close to Earth. He leads the Near-Earth Object Search Program using the telescopes on Haleakala. Richard works to protect these sites from light pollution. He's on several IES and CIE committees for outdoor lighting. Next, we have Sheldon Plentovich. Sheldon's an ecologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. She's coordinating programs for the Pacific Islands to implement innovative habitat improvement and restoration. On Oahu, she focuses on restoring and expanding nesting habitat for Hawaiian green sea turtles, Hawaiian seabirds, and the Hawaiian yellow-faced bee. Leora Radetzky is the senior scientist at the DLC. I have the pleasure of working with Leora most days. Leora came to the DLC to make a difference in market transformation. She came to the DLC with experience as a research scientist from Rensselaer Polytech's Lighting Research Center. She's a member of IES, ASABI, which is the American Society of Agricultural and Biological Engineers. She just published a paper on non-white light and is the main author of Luna DLC's Light Usage for Night Applications program. Last but not least, Grayson Gann with Hawaii Energy. Grayson is the Hawaii County Manager. He works with Hawaii businesses to provide energy efficiency consultation and help provide incentives for energy saving projects. He's had more than 20 years of hands-on experience with lighting, motors, controls, and PV. And Grayson also has a very unique situation working with a lighting ordinance on the Big Island. So I am not going to give yet another overview, but thank you for those of you who are here. Thank you for those of you who are online. I'm excited to start this conversation, and I'm going to hand it off to Richard. You have a mic. I don't know if you need it. So folks in the room or folks online, let us know if you can't hear without a mic.
Want to check this out. Good. Are working now? That's good. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so just about everything we do in astronomy involves really faint things. All the stuff that's bright was done hundreds of years ago. So we are building big telescopes on high mountains, and it's all about contrast. So the stars are up in the sky today. Right now, you just can't see them because the sky's too bright. So of course we need night, but we need the sky to be dark. We have this wonderful mountain, Mauna Kea, the best observatory site in the world because you get the sharpest images. If you have a sharp image and you have a dark sky, you can do a lot of stuff with faint things in the sky. If you let the sky get even 10% brighter, which it has not done yet on Mauna Kea, it basically makes the telescopes 10% smaller. We don't want that to happen. So the observatories, for those of you who are not in Hawaii, Mauna Kea is on the Big Island, the largest collection of optical infrared telescopes in the world. Haleakala is on the island of Maui, and it's probably the second best observatory site in the United States. It's not the second best in the world, but it's an excellent observatory site as well. Just to set the stage, the night sky is not completely dark. So I want to give you a little bit of homework. When you go home today, go look at the sky, and if there are clouds in the sky, if the clouds are bright, that means you have light pollution. And only in the very darkest places will you see the sky, the clouds as shadows against the natural night sky. So the night sky is not completely dark. There is air glow, which is from molecules, from atoms in the upper atmosphere. There's a zodiacal light from dust in the solar system, the starlight making the sky bright at night. The problem is that artificial light will make that sky brighter. And that's what we are trying to prevent from astronomy. We are gifted in Hawaii by being away from the Earth's magnetic poles. So the air glow is less. We have a darker sky here in Hawaii than anywhere in the United States. The National Park Service went to Denali National Park. We are much darker than Denali National Park. There is no man-made lighting in Denali National Park. So we have an amazing natural resource here, and we need to protect it better. So on the island of Hawaii, that's the only island in the state where the night sky has been truly protected, we have a strong lighting ordinance. But on Oahu, the night sky brightness ranges from a factor 2 brighter than natural on the North Shore. So basically, there's no point trying to put a telescope on this island because the sky is so bright here. And in downtown Honolulu, it might be 40 to 100 times brighter than natural. It's very, very difficult to see even the brightest stars in the sky from downtown Honolulu. So this is what you see on the Big Island, and that's the Milky Way. We've lost the ability to see the Milky Way in the southern sky on this island, completely gone. And if you look carefully in this image, you can also see a band of light going diagonally that way, which is a dipole light. Doesn't really show so well on the screen. So we've lost that probably forever on this island. It could be recovered with a little bit of more careful lighting on this island. I want to stress that light doesn't obey county boundaries or anything like that. It travels enormous distances. So it's easy to see Mauna Kea. It's easy to see Honolulu from Mauna Kea at a distance of 200 miles. Only the Earth's curvature will stop light. And Honolulu is 110 miles from Haleakala, and it really compromises our observations in the northwestern half of the sky. The light, and also clearly local light sources dominated the distant ones, so we have to be careful on the Big Island because the lighting for Mauna Kea is the most important for Mauna Kea. We have to be careful on Maui because the lighting is close to the tops, which is the most important in terms of protecting the night sky. So here's a video. It's showing a time lapse, and you can see over on the right, that orange glow is Honolulu seen from Haleakala. And then the kind of white diffuse glow over on the sort of right side of this is Maui's lights. So Maui's lights and Honolulu's lights are harming the observations in that half of the sky. So the key factors to protecting the night sky for astronomy are the color of the light, the direction of the light, and the amount of light. So the dominant process in the Earth's atmosphere that's contributing to light pollution is Rayleigh scattering. So that's an air molecule will temporarily grab a photon of light, and then it will forget the direction it came from and then re-emit it. And that process is very, very wavelength or color dependent. So blue light scatters much more than the yellow or red or amber light. And that's the reason that we don't have clouds in the sky, or the sky is blue in the daytime. And why sunsets are red? It's Rayleigh scattering by air molecules. And that's the reason why we are very, very keen to suppress blue light to protect astronomy. So the human eye, we're ever moving towards LED lighting. And the pump wavelength of LED lighting is usually about 450 nanometers of blue color. Our eyes are actually really insensitive to that color. So when you see an LED light, you don't actually realize how much blue is coming out of it. The problem is that it's not a problem, but the telescopes and instruments are incredibly sensitive to the blue light. So this blue light is a huge problem to astronomy, and is scattered so easily by the atmosphere. So compared to amber light, blue light is 3 times more likely to scatter by air molecules. And add to that, the natural night sky is really, really dark in the blue part of the spectrum. So below 550 nanometers, which is kind of like a yellowy green color, the night sky is really, really dark. So that's a very, very precious part of the spectrum for astronomy. The direction of light is super important. So the direction of light that is the most damaging to astronomy and to the night sky and basically contributes most to sky glow is the red zone in this diagram. So imagine a photon of light that's going just a little bit above horizontal. It's going to keep going through the Earth's atmosphere. Basically, it sees about 30 thicknesses of the Earth's atmosphere. And before it gets into space, it can do no harm. In those 30 thicknesses of the atmosphere, it's going to scatter and produce light pollution. We contrast that to light that's reflected off of the ground and going up. It has only a maybe 20% chance of scattering, and 80% of it is going to leave the atmosphere and not produce light pollution. So light a little bit above the horizontal is really, really bad. And then finally, the amount of light. So we are basically, the amount of sky glow is directly related to the amount of light you produce. So turning off lights is a really wonderful way to reduce light pollution and sky glow. So I'm using the minimum amount of light needed for a task. So I'm hearing today from multiple people replacing like a 90-watt low pressure sodium with a 90-watt LED. There's nothing dark sky friendly about a 90-watt LED, especially on the big eye. That's just way more light. We need to reduce lighting to the level that we have this iris in our eyes. And if we are always lighting to very, very high levels, we never let our eyes, the iris in our eyes open up and allow light in. So I think there's a very large amount of overlighting happening. Where possible, use motion sensors, turn off lights when they're not needed, and use dimming when we can. All of those actions are also going to reduce energy usage. And we all know how expensive energy has become. So there's an example of a new development in Waikoloa. I was sent this photo by someone who works on the telescopes on the Big Island. This is about 5 or 10 times as much light as is really needed for that task. And they may be compliant in terms of the spectrum with the ordinance on the Big Island. There's nothing dark sky friendly about that amount of light. And we need to work with the county on the Big Island to rein in excessive use of light. I wanted to finish by sharing this picture. I'm not sure how well it shows on the screen. So I wanted to just stress that where we are so blessed with such a dark sky. So this is a photo taken from the golf course of the Fairmont Orchid Hotel. And this is a zodiacal light. So zodiacal light is dust from light that's scattered from dust in the solar system. You can see the zodiacal light right after sunset or right before sunrise. And this is basically, you step away from the hotel. The hotel is reasonably well lit. It's not perfectly well lit. And you can step away from that hotel and you're going to be in a darker place than anywhere in the mainland United States, because we have a darker sky than anywhere in the mainland United States. So even when you have a tiny little bit of light, we still have a really, really dark sky. So you cannot see the zodiacal light from this island, but I urge you to go to the Big Island when the moon is down, just look at the sky, and see what you're missing if you're not compared to this island. Thank you.
Okay, hi everybody. I am super grateful to be able to talk about how artificial nighttime lighting attracts, disorients, and harms animals today. I'll start with the general effects of light on wildlife, and then I'll go into some Hawaii-specific examples that focus on seabirds and sea turtles. I'll talk about why it's a problem, and then what we can do to fix it to make sure that these species have safe places to nest into the future. So for millions of years, animals have used light from the moon and the stars to navigate. And in the late 1800s, when we started using the first electric light bulbs, that started interfering with wildlife. And by 1970, astronomers sounded the alarm that light pollution had already reduced visibility in the night sky. And we've all seen these satellite views of the night sky. This is starting in this particular slide shows beginning in 1950. And you can see how badly light pollution has increased. And in fact, it's been about 10% per year for the last 10 years. The harmful effects of artificial light on wildlife are extensive. Artificial light can attract and disorient species like sea turtles, seabirds, and insects. These species are attracted to the light, which can disorient and trap them so that they can't get away from it, and it concentrates them as a food source. Artificial light can also repel certain species, so it can exclude species from areas that they might normally occupy. Think like a nocturnal species that won't use an area because it's brightly lit with artificial light. And you can think of this as a form of habitat loss. Artificial light can also alter day and night patterns of species. So it can interrupt sleep so that animals can't recover, and it can interrupt behavior patterns. So think of a songbird singing into the nighttime because an area is artificially lit. So that songbird is wasting energy and is broadcasting its location to predators. And insects are probably the group we're most familiar with as being, attracted to artificial light. We even have sayings, right? Like a moth to a flame. And so light traps insects. And so when they're trapped, they're no longer foraging, breeding, or any of those things that they need to do to live. And they're easy prey. And we've all seen this, especially in the Hawaiian Islands. You can see them around our outdoor lighting with geckos all around taking advantage of the fact that those insects are trapped there by the light. And this is a problem, in light pollution is one of the drivers of these extensive population declines that we've observed worldwide in insect populations over the last several decades. And it's really problematic, and not just for people like me who love insects, but for everybody, because insects form the base of terrestrial ecosystems. They pollinate plants, including 75% of the plants we eat. They are food for wildlife, for birds, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and they're necessary for decomposition and nutrient recycling. So our existence depends on their existence. Okay, so now let's jump into some Hawaii-specific examples. So in the Hawaiian Islands, artificial light affects a lot of different things, but we really see it with our seabirds and our sea turtles. Both groups are very vulnerable to nighttime lighting. Both groups use the moon and the stars to navigate. Adults of this species will avoid nesting in areas that are artificially lit. They will sometimes become disoriented, the adults, but it's primarily the fledgling seabirds, so the seabirds leaving their burrow for the first time, and hatchling sea turtles. It's primarily those two, baby animals that are leaving the nest for the first time that become disoriented as they're trying to reach the ocean. The negative effects of artificial light on seabirds in Hawaii primarily affect burrow nesting seabirds like this super cute wedge-tailed shearwater, or ua okane. This species is our most common nester in the main Hawaiian Islands, and it is the bird that most commonly is disoriented by light and falls out. So you'll hear the term seabird fall out. And that happens in the fall and the winter when seabirds are fledgling for the first time. Our burrow nesting seabirds, we have the most common one, the wedge-tailed shearwater. We also have Bulwer's petrel. We have two endangered seabirds, the Newell shearwater and the Hawaiian petrel, that are, they're all federally protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, but two of them are also listed as endangered, so they really need our help. These fledglings leaving their burrow for the first time are the most affected by light. And what you'll see now that you know to look is sometimes, like, say you're at a park, you can look and see birds circling endlessly on the edge of the cone of light until they become exhausted or they collide with structures and fall to the ground. And once they're on the ground, they're easy prey for all the invasive mammals we humans have introduced, like cats, mongooses, rats, off-leash dogs, all those things. So this is a Newell shearwater here on the left side. So seabird fallout isn't concentrated in a single place on Oahu or in the main islands. It happens all over the place. You can see from this map, this is from 2019 seabird fallout. These are locations where birds were collected. And you can imagine that there were at least twice as many birds that fell out and were not found. Because once seabirds hit the ground, they want to be in cover, they'll get in the vegetation, or they'll quickly be eaten by invasive predators. And so this is the site that we see all the time. There's some seabird biologists here, and we're just completely numb to this because we see it all the time. Okay. Moving on to the Honu, or Hawaiian green sea turtles. Honu are historically nested in significant numbers throughout the Hawaiian Islands, so in the main and the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. Unfortunately, as we do as humans, by 1950, we had over-harvested them to the point where they were no longer nesting at any other site in the main Hawaiian or in the Hawaiian Islands except for a single tiny atoll. And that atoll is Lalo, or French Frigate Shoals. So in this slide, you can kind of see the outline of the atoll, and the red dots in the middle are the tiny islets that are the only land masses left on this atoll as it slowly erodes away. The mean elevation here is 4 feet above sea level. And it's just made up of a bunch of tiny islands, most of which are ephemeral or come and go. And this is where 90%, more than 90% of our Honu, our green sea turtles, nest, because we harvested all of them to eat them. So this is what they're left with. And as you can imagine, since it's 4 feet above sea level, it is very vulnerable to sea level rise and to storm, increased storm frequency and wash over. And sure enough, we saw this in 2018 when Hurricane Wailaka came in and destroyed the most important nesting island for Honu in the Hawaiian Islands. And so you can see the before and after pictures here on this slide. So why is this important? Why are we talking about the northwestern Hawaiian Islands as we're talking about light here? It's because clearly that one atoll there's not going to be suitable nesting habitat at that site in the near future. We're seeing it erode away already. We are in a pants on fire situation, as Howard says. And so we need to create safe places on high elevation islands within the main Hawaiian Islands. The problem is sea turtles and seabirds are very site faithful, right? They come back to the site where they were born. We demolished all of their nesting colonies. So there has to be some level of luck for them to disperse back to some of these islands. I work with a local nonprofit and this really amazing team of volunteers. If any of you want to help us, let me know afterwards. And we monitor the number of turtle nests. We monitor all possible nesting beaches on Oahu. We've been doing this since 2016. And at first we'd find 1 or 2 nests and we'd lose our mind and be super excited. And then something happened in 2019 I don't know how related this is with the destruction of East Island, but in 2019, we saw an increase, and then we saw these substantial increases since then. So we have a chance to do something. And so if you're a Honu, your mom comes in, she lays her eggs, and then after about 60 days, you and all your siblings hatch together and you work together to get to the surface. It's super cool. You should look it up. And then if it's dark, if it's light outside, you sit just below the surface like these two little hatchlings are doing, and you wait for it to get dark and you wait for the sand to cool off. And then you gun it. Like you burst forward, you go as fast as you can with all your siblings to the brightest horizon. And so on a natural beach, like at Lalo or French Frigate Shoals, where there's no artificial light, this is, of course, towards the ocean that is sparkling with moon and starlight. However, these turtles that are nesting on Oahu and the main Hawaiian Islands have to deal with artificial light like this. And so this artificial light causes a problem because it leads hatchlings away from the ocean. And in fact, in these nests that we're monitoring so carefully, we have found that artificial light is the biggest threat for our Honu. And I think this next point is one of the most important things for us as lighting, as people interested in lighting. And that's that it's not just lights on the beach, at parks on the beach or at houses on the beach. These lights can be miles and miles away. And so these two pictures are taken from the sand dunes at James Campbell National Wildlife Refuge, a pretty dark place. And these lights are from the wind farm up on the hill, and the white lights are from the crane, a crane that was there. And this caused the disorientation of hundreds of hatchlings that walked Nauka, or inland and died because of these lights that are miles and miles away. And so just like the seabirds, the artificial lights affect Honu all around the island. So a lot of people won't know these specific places, but these are places on the North Shore, on the east side. They're all around Oahu. And so it's not just a problem that we can address on the North Shore. It's not going to fix it. We have to tackle this. And it's not going to work if we just fix it on the shorelines. We have to tackle it more holistically. Okay, and so once hatchlings are disoriented by light, by artificial lights, they are vulnerable. They are easy prey for predators. And so this hatchling, which is being eaten alive by invasive tropical fire ants, this hatchling was disoriented by a single light at the Bellows Beach bathroom, the public bathroom. And the whole nest was disoriented. A bunch of turtles ended up behind the men's toilet. A bunch of turtles went walking around and were depredated. And this is one of those that died right then. But the other turtles can be, if you don't get eaten, you can also become exhausted and dehydrated. And even if turtles eventually make it to the ocean, they've wasted these vital energy sources that they need for survival, just walking around in the grass. So I hope I've convinced you that artificial light can harm wildlife, but there are things that we can do to use artificial light responsibly. The first thing is to turn off unnecessary lights. The second is to use motion sensors and dimmers when you can. Keep the lights as low to the ground as possible, and shield lights so that light is only visible where it's needed. So it's not horizontal or upward. You're just lighting what you need to light. And then use low lumen, amber, and red lighting. These longer wavelengths in the amber and red are less harmful to wildlife. So artificial lighting causes significant problems for wildlife, but it's something we know how to address, and I hope that we can all work together in situations like this and outside of this to help solve this problem. Thank you.
Start my timer. Okay, hey everyone. I'm going to talk to you today about solutions. And so let's get started. I can tell you who I am a little bit more than Tina said. So the DLC, if you don't know who we are, we have a really mixed audience, both in person and online. We've got biologists and entomologists and astronomers, so not everyone knows who the DLC is. We are a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to achieve energy optimization by enabling controllability with a focus on quality, people, and the environment. And so one of our tools are technical requirements or specifications. And there are many stakeholders across North America that use our specifications to save energy. So we have energy efficiency organizations, governmental agencies. Oh, thank you. There we go. See, Sheldon did a better job. Facilities managers, ESCOs, all stakeholders who want to find energy efficient lighting and controls, and they really are looking for that third-party verification, and that's what we offer. And so our specifications help them find energy efficiency products, and in many cases, they can be rebated by the energy efficiency organization, like our consortium members. And so we've been working on a new set of specifications that we call Luna for about 3 years. And these specifications help our stakeholders both reduce their energy use and maintain or meet their savings goals, as well as limit unintended consequences like light pollution. And so I'll be talking about 4 resources today that we have that are free for everyone that I want to share that might give you some solutions like Sheldon and Richard talked about. Okay, do this. All right, so again, we have a diverse crowd. Not everyone speaks lighting jargon. In lighting, we love jargon. The more acronyms, the better. So let's get some down so we can all speak the same language. And for the lighting practitioners in the audience and online, I'm going to keep it really simple. So if you really want to get in the weeds about bug ratings, you can look at our specs. I'm not going to do that today. Okay, so let's get started on the most important ones. First of all, you'll see a lot about an SPD. An SPD is a spectral power distribution. This is a graph that tells you what the radiant power is at each wavelength. So basically, it tells you the colors in a light source. Okay. The next metric or term you'll see a lot in our specs, and we've talked about a little bit, are lumens. Lumens are the unit we use to count light output, right? Visible light. And so if you're talking about reducing your light levels, you want to look for a source that has less lumens than another source. Don't use wattage as a surrogate for light output. Definitely use lumens whether you're looking for equals or less. And then we like to talk a lot about efficacy. Efficacy is lumens per watt, so it's like miles per gallon, right? It tells you how energy efficient your light source is. The next one is correlated color temperature. Say that 5 times fast, or CCT. CCT is really an appearance metric. It tells us how bluish white or how yellowish white our light source is. So a light source that is more bluish white is going to have a higher number, like 4,000 K, it's measured in Kelvin, or 5,000 K is a very bluish white light source. Now you will see that a lot of light pollution guidelines and regulations use CCT as a proxy for controlling the spectral component of light pollution. So for example, 3,000 K is a really common CCT that's used as an upper threshold to limit light pollution spectrally. NWL stands for non-white light. So a non-white light source is one that has either a broad or a narrow SPD, and it's really producing this amber or yellowish or red light that Sheldon talked about. And what's interesting is that if you think about our old technologies, even technologies that were around 10 years ago, like high pressure sodium or low pressure sodium, those are actually non-white light sources, right? So we want to be able to look at those as well. SSL, you're going to see a lot in my slides. It stands for solid state lighting. That basically means LED. It's a synonymous term. And then finally, this is a DLC acronym. This is QPL, or our qualified products list. And so in our technical requirements, products that have submitted products to be eligible, those that meet the technical requirements have been vetted across all of our requirements. Those that show up on the QPL are the ones that you should look for. All right, next slide. Okay, so the first resource I want to highlight, let's look at this from an application, right? We've talked a little bit about application, Sheldon and Richard have. So I want to point a resource out that is application strategies. And these are high-level strategies, but it really matters how you apply a light source. It doesn't matter how good quality a light source is or how energy efficient it is. If you don't apply it correctly, if you overlight, then it's not really energy efficient at all. Okay, and in each one of my slides, you're going to see these QR codes. You can just put your camera at it and you can get right to the free document. So let's look at these. Now, I do want to say that a lot of the pictures you'll see in my slides are Hawaii-based, and the things that we point out as don'ts are Hawaii-based, but really these strategies can be applied anywhere on the mainland here. They really depend on your context. Okay, so let's begin. So the first strategy you should use is to use outdoor lighting that is dimmable and control ready, right? You want to be able to tune your lighting to meet your local energy codes, to save energy beyond your energy codes, to enable adaptive lighting that allows you to dim the lights when there's no one there, right? No one wants to see a bright parking lot that's on at full power all night long. That's a waste of money, of energy, and it creates light pollution. So that's the most important strategy. The second strategy is to consult your local experts and your community members. So of course you should work with lighting practitioners and lighting designers. They're going to make sure that you can choose installed lighting that makes sense relative to the requirements that you have. But really importantly, other experts, local experts, like Sheldon and Richard here, right? Wildlife experts, scientists, and community members, they have important input to give that we should listen to before we ever make a lighting decision. Okay, we need to look at this holistically. You've heard that outdoor lighting impacts wildlife, especially nocturnal wildlife and plants, right? We should try to use the type of lighting that is deemed less harmful. And the way we're going to figure that out ourselves, we're going to need to talk to experts to give us the guidance, not just the right lighting, but also at the right time, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be all year long. So light at night also has a social impact on humans. Not only does it limit our view of the nighttime sky, as Richard said, but it can create uncomfortable, even harmful conditions, especially for underrepresented communities. So we want to make sure we look at that social impact as well and talk to social scientists so we understand what we're doing. Okay, the third strategy, we've talked a lot about this, is to use the right amount of light, right? So when areas are overlit, like you see in this picture here, more light is reflected off of surfaces. This increases sky glow, and it costs us money and energy, right? And energy is expensive here. And as Richard said, that reflected light doesn't obey our site property lines or county lines. It's just going to keep going and going and going and impacting the sky and everyone else. So a lot of the pictures that you see here not only address the main strategy, in this case overlighting, but you'll see lots of other things that are important. This site has lights directed towards the beach and lights directed towards the waterway. The light that is installed on top of the bridge isn't keeping light on the bridge deck. It's actually going down and lighting the waterway underneath it. And all that is impacting the wildlife that's there and is trying to do its thing at night. So we want to make sure we attack as many of these don'ts as we can. Okay, so the fourth strategy is to control lighting every night, right? This is a nightly thing. Most of us are used to doing this if we're lighting people to reduce energy use and to reduce light pollution, right? So the nice thing about dimming is that it's linearly related to light pollution. In other words, if you dim your lights by 75% each night, maybe less depending on your codes, then you're going to reduce that light pollution by that commensurate amount, right? So you dim 75%, light pollution goes down 75%. Energy use goes down 75%. Your bill goes down 75%, right? You can also use dimming to task tune or sort of to get your light levels just right. There's no need to light above the minimum maintained averages that are in the IES practices. In other words, they tell us what the right level is. We don't need to go 2 or 5 or 10 times higher than that. Just design to those light levels, and controls allow you to do that easily. And then finally, use switching and dimming, especially to turn off non-essential lighting, like landscape lighting. When there's no people there, only the people are getting enjoyment out of lighting the trees. The tree isn't enjoying it. The insects on the trees aren't enjoying it. The birds aren't enjoying it. So why have it on when there's no human there to enjoy it? Okay, 5. Control the lighting seasonally. This might be new to a lot of us, is to think about those controls, not only nightly, but think about those seasonal impacts, right? There's a lot of events that occur annually. We've heard about bird migration and fledging. We've heard about sea turtle hatchings, but also firefly mating and salmon spawning. All those occur on an annual basis, and we should switch off or dim the lights in response to that. Many of those events occur primarily during nighttime, right? Not during the daytime. There are billions of birds that are flying overhead during the night when we're sleeping, right? We don't need the lighting, and all we're doing is affecting them. So let's think about that, not to disrupt this nocturnal behavior. So when possible, again, dim and switch off your non-essential lighting during unoccupied hours, and consult with your local experts to figure out when that is, right? We don't have to be experts at everything in lighting. We just have to have the right context to help us understand when that is. So sea turtle hatching season is different in Hawaii than it is in Florida. It's different in different locations. So work with your local community to find out what you should do. Okay, the next one is about distribution. And this one is really important because, as Richard explained, it's not evenly distributed, right? Light at horizontal and just above horizontal has a really big impact on sky glow, right? And so we can use light sources with minimum uplight and shielding to make sure that we're not wasting energy just lighting that sky. Similarly, we should look at where the light is on the ground. If you're trespassing onto your neighbor's property or into an adjoining site, maybe that's annoying, maybe it's a nuisance, but for non-human organisms, that can really be problematic, right? If you're just lighting the beach. I was walking around Waikiki my first night here on Sunday night, and we were walking through these beautiful gardens at one of the fancy hotels on the beach. And they had these amber, really warm, low CCT light sources mounted on the palm trees and sort of aimed out. I didn't like the paths. The paths were dark. The walkway was dark. The stairs were dark. But you know what was lit? The grass and the sand and the beach. So the light wasn't useful. It wasn't lighting the intended task, right? And it was lighting all the stuff we shouldn't light at night. So we have LEDs really enabled us to have a lot more choices and a lot more selection, and we should use the capability of LED and controls to really do what we need to do. Okay, and so finally, the last strategy that I just want to talk about really quickly, which we've heard a lot about, is to minimize blue-violet wavelengths, right? That blue-violet greenish light. Both Sheldon and Richard told us why that's important for different reasons. And so I just want to say, if everything else is equal, if you've met every other strategy first, you haven't overlit, you've used controls, you've shaped the distribution to be what it needs to be, only then, in most cases, will spectrum make a difference, right? Because those other things that we've done are already so bad that they've kind of washed out spectrum, okay? And then you can really see the effect of CCT. Now, there are cases where non-white light is really appropriate. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, like amber, for non-human organisms. But in general, for people, you want to do all that other stuff first. Okay, so now that we understand what we should do sort of on a broad basis, right, in terms of lighting in general, I do want to talk a little bit about the resource that the DLC offers, specifically at the fixture level. So the DLC's technical requirements are intended to be used at the luminaire, the light fixture level, right, not necessarily on an application level. And so we have technical requirements that apply to outdoor lighting. And first and foremost, every product that's on our QPL has to meet what's called a SSL version 5.1 technical requirement. And that's where we address efficacy, right? So it's energy savings. We address warranty, we address safety testing, we address how it renders color, all of these things that make a product suitable for human use, right? And then on top of that, we have this new set of requirements we call Luna. And what's important about Luna is that everything in Luna has to meet these underlying requirements as well, so that you know if you pick a fixture that mitigates light pollution, you can also meet your energy savings goals. You can also reduce energy at the same time. It is possible to do both. So again, these Luna requirements establish thresholds that are more rigid, that go above and beyond 5.1. And what really we want to do with Luna is not only do we want you to save energy, but we want you to be able to easily pick out a fixture that minimizes light pollution, right? easily limits negative impacts on wildlife, and also provides appropriate visibility for people. Because to be honest, that's why we have light at night, right? It's for ourselves. And so we should make sure that the product works well for us and works well for every organism. And so not only do the Luna technical requirements allow you to pick a fixture that is sort of optimized for its use, but it also leverages or enables those other strategies that I talked about, right? Because all Luna products are dimmable. They're all controllable. They all minimize short wavelength light. They all limit uplight. And each one of those makes it easier for you to leverage those other strategies I talked about first. And so I do want to say that not every product is on the Luna QPL. We, for example, don't allow aimable floodlights and spotlights because we don't want light to be aimed up at the night sky. But you will find pole-mounted lights and decorative lights and canopies and wall-mounted lights. All of these are eligible for Luna. But what is common across them is they each inherently limit uplight, and they have limited ability to kind of be aimed up to the sky. So they're good neighbors, if you will. Okay, so let's just talk just for a moment about the thresholds. As Richard said, light at 90 degrees and above is really bad for the sky. So every Luna product has really strict limits on uplight. Some decorative products are allowed a little bit more, but they're all still very, very low. And importantly, every Luna product, an arm or pole mounted product, won't allow you to aim it or tilt it more than 10 degrees. So it's intended to be aligned with a roadway or aligned with a pavement and no more than that, right? So you'll actually get mounting information in Luna that you won't necessarily get with other products. Only warm color temperature products are allowed in Luna, so you're going to find products from 2200K to 3000K in Luna, and then every product that is in Luna also has to be dimmable to at least 20% maximum power, so you can be sure you can tune it and dim it when the space is occupied, and importantly, when it's not occupied. Okay, so I just want to show you, if you've never seen our QPL, this is like a little brief snapshot of what it looks like. Every row in the QPL is a specific product, a specific color temperature, a specific driver, a specific optic, and so that you can find the products that you're looking for. Every product in the QPL meets rebate program requirements. They've all been third-party evaluated, objectively evaluated by our team with very rigid technical requirements. Each of them has performance data that you can look at, as much data really as you want, and probably more. And you can search and filter also. So if you're looking for a specific product type, you can search the QPL. If you're looking for a specific color temperature, you can search the QPL. And then finally, there we go. This is an example of what you see when you click inside one of those rows. So this is a product, a real product. You can see its power, you can see its correlated color temperature, you can see its light output, its lumens, you can see everything you want to know about it, right? And what's really exciting, what I really like about Luna, and this is unique to Luna, is you can get the SPD for the Luna tested products. You can actually see the SPD, you can see what the spectrum looks like, you can download the SPD, and if you're a scientist that wants to see the SPDs like Richard and Sheldon, you can actually do your analyses on it. So it's really great. And in some cases, like in Hawaii, where you might need to use the SPD, you can also do that as well. Grayson's going to talk about that. So I do want to say just 2 minutes here on amber LEDs. There are places, especially places where you have environmentally protected areas, where you really want to use non-white light, like amber LEDs, or if you really need to reduce light pollution. And these products, which have no or very little blue and violet or green wavelengths, have a really important use case in these applications. We don't include them in Luna program because we don't have standards for them. And so I want to share some of the work we've done. Even though we don't support them directly in Luna, we've spent considerable resources to understand and share the knowledge that we have to enable market transformation for these products. I also have a couple demos I brought with me today that I hope to share during the Q&A. I have a very low CCT demo I'd like to show you that's 2200K, and a really cool 1800K amber that I can show you as well later on. So as I said, there are no spectral standards for non-white light. We're really lucky for white light that we have standards bodies like ANSI that really help us explain from manufacturer to manufacturer exactly what to do. but for non-white light, those just don't exist for general illumination. So manufacturers, honestly, they're doing their best to differentiate their products. They're doing their best to help you try to understand what they're doing, but they need standards as well to help them do that. And so we are working to give the information we have to these standards organizations. And we hope that with more standards, we'll be able to accept amber products into Luna in the future. And so 2 resources here. One is a white paper that we just published called Non-White Light Sources for Nighttime Environments. This really talks about the gaps in performance, the gaps in efficacy understanding, the trade-offs between efficacy and color rendition and sky glow, and some of the metrics that are being used, both from light pollution organizations as well from the manufacturers to kind of understand how this works. If you're really interested in amber, if you want to know how it works, or you want help selecting an amber product, I'd really suggest you look at this paper. And at the very least, make sure you ask for the SPD from every manufacturer that you're working with. And then the last slide I have, and our last paper, is our brand new journal article. So we decided that we were going to tackle these knowledge gaps, right? That not only would we say, hey, there's a problem, but we actually put time and effort into proposing a solution. And so I think my co-author and our collaborator, Tony Esposito, is online with us today. Hi, Tony. He's amazing. And he and I just published this journal article. If you scan the link, you can get a copy. And what it's doing is it's proposing 3 things. First, we're proposing standardized bins, 1800K, 2000K, and a type of amber called a phosphor converted amber, so everyone uses the same definitions. We're proposing standardized terminology, so we all say the same thing and mean the same thing. And finally, a calculator that you can use to look at these SPDs. So I hope you find that useful. Happy to answer any questions. I'm going to turn it over to Grayson.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to cover an example of dark sky lighting project for the Big Island, since we have a pretty stringent dark sky, which is a good example of a project boots on the ground, and also to explain, Hawaii is here to help with these as a resource as you try to find solutions to your outside lighting projects. So basically, just going to start with this slide to explain the service territories of Hawaii Energy. So we cover Honolulu, Maui County, and Hawaii County. And as I was introduced, the Hawaii County manager of the program, I cover all the aspects of the program for the Big Island. And with that said, I would like to explain basically the creation of how the dark sky ordinance exists on the Big Island. Was probably most influential from the astronomy field and all of the telescopes we have on Mauna Kea. Early on, the county recognized the need to limit light pollution. And so in 1988, Article 9 was established. And it was low pressure sodium was selected as preferred exterior lighting because of its low spectral range. And it's also just so happened to be one of the most efficient sources of light available. So everything was hunky-dory for a long time there, but then along come the option of LEDs, right? And as LEDs quickly became very popular because of their energy saving qualities, manufacturers were responding to the demand and started retooling factories to produce LED lighting. And unfortunately, that was at the cost of low pressure sodium. So low pressure sodium fixtures and bulbs started to become very hard to find. And the county division, of course, was looking at its inventory of lighting and saying, oh, we're going to have to do something. And because of the nature of LEDs, the extreme energy savings and the early on models weren't necessarily focused on like dark sky or lighting ordinances or anything. The draw was the energy savings. And in our typical, we generally like more for less, right? So the idea of the ability to lower our energy use by half or more and get more light out of it just is appealing. And I think that kind of drove, has been a driving factor between the conversions over the years. And so seeing that there were not very many options available or no options available for LED conversions and the lack of low pressure sodium coming on, the traffic division started planning and testing period from 2006 to 2013 to try to identify products that would conform to the dark sky ordinance, or the Article 9, and be dependable enough and the right color. So it was a long process for them. And during that process, they had to revise Article 9. And the most significant change to it regarding LEDs was the inclusion of a requirement for less than 2% blue light. So in 2010, they deployed their first 14 of these prototype lights along the bayfront and Hilo. And by 2013, they put out 1,000 of them. And during the years 2015 to 2017, they converted all the streetlights on the island. So these two side-by-side pictures on this slide, actually the next slide here, will be a better demonstration of it. On the left, you have the low-pressure sodium lights. And there are two issues sort of around low-pressure sodium, even though it was the preferred type of lighting. You can notice the diffusion of light. So they did have the ability to scatter lighting around a little bit and kind of spread lighting around than just where it was needed below. But also this photo on the left, the before photo, demonstrates that low pressure sodium light color along with compared to a traffic light. So for someone like me who's slightly colorblind, growing up on the Big Island, this was always a stressful thing when it was raining and you're coming up to an intersection and you weren't quite looking at the light right before you got to it, and you look and they're all yellow, right? So when they did do the conversion and switched over, that not only was the diffuse nature of the light kind of corrected with the directional application of LEDs, but also the colors were a little bit more distinguishable for folks like me. So the left photo, you can see the low pressure sodium, you can see the diffusion, and you can see the light right in the center there, along with the yellow traffic light, how confusing that can be. But also, as you see the lights going down the road, you can see the amount of light that's like kind of spread out along the roadway and along the sides. There is some water on the road in the before photo, so there is a little bit more reflection. But on the after photo, you can see that the roadway's lit, and you can sort of see the pinpoints of light where the street lights are. But one of the other important aspects about this conversion that I think wasn't really appreciated by most is that your night vision is not as affected. You can see beyond the light. You can see through the cone of light and beyond the cone of light. So actually, in issues where glare and for folks with cataracts or any driving issues, some of that was alleviated. So the next photo, oh, sorry, there's two buttons I can push. So just an overview of the project energy numbers, because that's sort of why energy comes in, right? We can provide rebates to help fund the project. And the whole idea here is to show that you can do a dark sky friendly project, and we can help you guys fund it. So for the most part on the Big Island, there was a range of 55 watt and 180 watt low pressure sodiums. When they were converted, they basically cut everything in half from a range of 26 watt to 188 watt. And after the full conversion, the first year's annual savings were 330 kilowatts during peak. So a reduction of peak load of 330 kilowatts and over 2,170,000 kilowatt hours over the first year's savings. So at our costs, those savings can add up. It also represents over 4 million pounds of carbon production avoided. So here's just from that conversion project. This is a good visual representation of the before and after project. So this is Waikoloa Village, and this is probably 2017, within the period where the conversion took place. So there has been new development in Waikoloa, as Richard pointed out with one of his slides of the new development. But on the left, you have the low pressure sodium basically being deployed all over Waikoloa. And on the right, you have after the conversion, you can clearly see the reduction in diffusion of the light and a little bit dimmer appearance. Important to point out is in the middle, just to the left, is an area with a private owner that didn't change their low pressure sodium. So even in the right, with a little bit of a difference in characteristics of the photo, you can see a comparison side by side of low pressure sodium with the newer LEDs that were deployed. And so in closing, because I know we're getting close and I don't need too much time, just my last comments on it is that LED street lighting projects can cut your energy use in half or more, significantly more than half if you're including dimming. The longer lifespans are another real financial consideration because the reduced maintenance costs of pole lighting, it's really expensive having a lift truck and electricians. They're not cheap. So the longer lifespan of them reduces your maintenance costs. And finally, if you're planning an LED project, keep light and pollution in mind. As we can see, that's what we're all here together talking about. Select products that are night, sky, and animal friendly. Use dimming wherever you can, and limit your lumen output to only what's needed. Because this is, again, a very important thing, is you could have a product that meets the ordinance, but you can overlight it. So with the reflection from the ground, especially when we get a lot of rain on the Big Island, you could just basically offset what you were trying to accomplish and still comply. And so we're here to support. We provide rebates on lots of LED projects, and we provide very generous rebates on them. 8 to 12 cents a kilowatt hour for the first year savings, and depending on the island, you're on $125 to $400 per kW reduced during your peak hours. And with that, I'll pass it over to.
Yeah. Well, thanks, everyone. Those slides were great. I do have a number of questions online, but thank you to everyone who came today. Are there any questions here? You want me to come to you?
Hi, thank you for your information today. The question I have is, how do we draw a balance? I understand the astronomy, the wildlife side, but I also understand the human side that, it's harder times to see in amber light. Like in Florida, there's the coastal construction line, so everything beyond that toward the ocean is amber. Astronomy, amber is the ideal light, similar to low pressure sodium. How do you draw the balance between, the wildlife, the amber, and human light? The Big Island light is filtered, so under U.S. wildlife, filtered light is not allowed, only amber and red. So how can we address it? So everyone's partially happy. I know they can't be 100% happy. That's my question.
Is this for me?
I don't know.
Oh, I think you kind of hit it. I think that it goes to, sure, how do we find a happy medium between the different requirements we have? Big Island has a dark sky ordinance.
Well, between astronomy,
astronomy,
wildlife,
community and wildlife.
the energy community.
I think that with the slide that said consult with your local experts, the government agencies that might have the requirement, because it might be that during this process we find that, I mean, this whole progression that we're in, going from all around trying to switch over to renewables and deal with light pollution and deal with excessive energy use, all of these things is collectively a learning process. So it's going to require communication amongst everybody, because it might be that, hey, maybe one agency will say, okay, we see that we're going to have to include amber or this type of lighting, or maybe we need to make exceptions for both because of these different applications and create solutions, right, for the needs. Because as you said, there's some of it's not applicable for certain situations, and you need it. So I'd say that's probably it, having forums like this, and maybe bringing more people together, maybe follow up things on this topic to really plan ahead, because that's what's going to take. We start looking ahead and going, well, where are we going with this? Instead of just going, hey, we can get more for less with lighting, because I think that's been the big driver. It's appealing. You might as well throw a little bit more lumens in it, make it a little more brighter. It feels more safe, right? Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
And then to speak from a wildlife angle, like it's for no matter what light you put on the landscape, if you can keep it low to the ground, or if you can dim it, or if you can shield it. To me, as I drive around Oahu, with my, this kind of newish knowledge for myself, I'm just surprised at how there's so many things that are unshielded, and that would take care of a large portion of the problems for wildlife anyway. Like that slide I showed where the crane light was on, it wasn't even in use all night. Like they could have just turned that light off and those baby turtles would have died. So some of it's just education and being cognizant, but things like keeping things low to the ground and dimming it are easy. I do hear what you're saying, and I talked to a lot of homeowners during the turtle project, and their first concern is safety. And I say that there's no reason to compromise safety. You can totally do both, with these methods that we're talking about. And, when Leora shows you the new lights, like those lights, I feel like there isn't compromise, for safety with some of the new lighting. It's pretty bright and it's, less harmful to wildlife.
So, I hear you. I don't think the astronomy message is not to turn off all the lights. It's to use light responsibly and to do as little damage as you can to the night sky. I think Leora has these new technology, and there may be a technological fix of these lower CCG lights that the astronomers can tolerate, perhaps. We've got to look at them in a little bit more detail. That is not an amber light, but it's got a little bit of blue. And I think we're not going to tell the sports people to turn the lights off. That might be the wildlife people will. But astronomers, we've got to be realistic. We need the harbors, we need the people to work at the telescopes, we need the infrastructure. So we can't build a telescope in an isolated place away from everything. So the light comes with it, but please do as little damage with the light. Don't use more than you need. And if you're a mainland, there are some fast food places in Hilo. They build it just like the fast food place in the mainland. They completely ignore the lighting, so they get away with it. But the Hawaii County does not do any enforcement. They need to change the law so it's not a criminal thing. And they've had a draft change the lighting ordinance ready to go for 4 years. And they haven't done anything about it. That would make it a civil penalty instead of a criminal penalty. I think some enforcement would do a lot in terms of bringing everything under control of the big eye.
Leora, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'm happy to show this off, and even if I do it in just a little bit, but I do think technology actually is a really amazing solution that we have, and so we can use controls and sensors, and there's a lot of innovation that LED manufacturers can do. I mean, we're seeing some really innovative spectrum that are coming. I've got 2 to show. What they need is demand. They need people to demand these solutions, because if no one's demanding them, there's not going to be a market there. So if we demand these better solutions, we can get long life, we can get amazing color rendition, we can get efficacy, and we can limit the negative impact. So all we have to do is work together to create a demand for better answers, and we can get there. And I always talk to my non-lighting scientist experts, because no one can be an expert at everything. So you have amazing experts here. Even in the audience, you've got amazing experts here that we should all get to know.
Because I don't know if within what you were asking had to do with safety, because that's always a very big common concern. And something that I don't think is appreciated. I live in a very rural area where we're all on our toes because there's areas of the Big Island, it's still pretty unruly. And something that I don't think people appreciate is dimming, the safety aspect of dimming. A light that is on 24/7 with no change, it doesn't make that safe. But a light that kicks on when someone comes around they're gonna run like cockroaches back to the dark when you have criminals. I see it because all of my neighbors out where I live, we have lights that kick on if somebody comes around. And that is much more disruptive to nefarious activity than a light that stays on and there's no change and there's no notice that something's going on. I think that's something I'm surprised they don't see more of when it comes to external lighting in general.
Actually, all new projects have to follow the IECC. And the area light, parking lot light have to have some sort of control.
That's great for new construction.
Yeah.
I see folks doing retrofits or renovations all the time, and I'm always like, you should consider the dimming, because not only is the safety actually going to improve, but your energy savings are going to like double. I didn't address that.
So I'd like to bring up another related issue that touches on most of the things you mentioned. You guys talked about the balance issue. That is the subject of emergency lighting. That might sound a little weird, but I did a giant, massive deep dive on this subject last year because I teach classes on controls. That is a really huge issue because it's probably the most critical thing that a lot of the people in this room deal with from a code viewpoint. But it's still kind of an afterthought for a lot of people. I'm just going to tell you anecdotally that the building that I live in Kaka'aka, on the recreation deck on the 5th floor, absolutely does not meet normal egress or emergency egress requirements, even on the deck, the outside, which is still required by law. And I'm okay with that because I think that the required levels for emergency or even normal egress are probably higher than they need to be, but I can't change the code all by myself, right? One thing that I will say anecdotally is that the uniformity there sucks. And that's a huge, huge issue. The funny thing is that there's no uniformity requirement for normal egress, but there is a uniformity requirement for emergency egress. So I just wanted to bring that up as an issue because it touches on this. And, we included stuff like that in code requirements. It would probably make a huge difference, right? I think you probably agree, right? Unfortunately, that's not included in normal egress. So it may not be, and I can guarantee that I've been to a bunch of places here on Oahu that do not meet normal egress or emergency egress requirements. So that's bringing up the safety issue that you mentioned before, which obviously people are worried about. It's a serious concern, right? It's a legal concern, liability concern. But I know as a lighting designer that, there are ways of dealing with that way better than the way they do it and could be extremely energy efficient. You probably meet all of your goals too. So sorry, it's a long, drawn out thing, but I spent a massive time last year dealing with this.
Yeah, and I think I would just add, the second most important strategy is to talk with your local experts in your community. You definitely want to talk with your local lighting design experts and lighting practitioner experts because they're going to realize this holistic perspective across the board that Sheldon shouldn't worry about, right? And Richard shouldn't worry about it. I don't even know that you should worry about it. But if you bring in this community of experts in, you're going to get this amazing end solution that you couldn't have come up with alone.
Thanks. Excuse me, any more questions from the audience?
I have a comment, which is rather interesting. I was just in Sedona over the Christmas break, and they have the only McDonald's in the nation that has. So I think, also counties working with other counties that have, paved the way and managed to, take down these corporate giants and have them be more accountable.
Sorry, what's the difference with their McDonald's?
Their M is not the yellow.
Oh.
It's actually like I don't know. I didn't look it up. It's actually like an amber, but it's a greenish. I'm not sure what their standards are, but Sedona is very strict about their lighting. So I also think there's room for that kind of partnering as well.
I'm not sure I can add. I think I've seen it. I was puzzled by it because if you go to green instead of yellow, you're actually going to make it worse.
Yeah, I don't know if it like changed, but I was like, oh, that's so interesting. But then there's like a weird, maybe it's a coattail. I don't know.
Well,
But
I think I've seen it,
yeah.
but I'm puzzled by it.
Yeah.
So here's a question from the online audience. Rods in our eyes are more active at night. When avoiding blue lights, are higher lumens required for vision?
There is an interaction, right? So we've got what's called a duplex retina, right? We have cones that work during the day and sort of in this transition zone, and we have rods that help us see off axis at night. And those, that switch over in our retina actually is irradiance dependent, right? It depends on how much light actually hits your retina. So I think that there is an interaction there. I don't think that a lot of I know that a lot of our standards have yet to tackle this. It's very complex to deal with mesopic vision and under scotopic vision. We shouldn't have any electric lighting on at night at all, frankly, but we can try to get to that ideal, right? So I think, again, it's about task lighting. You know, if you're trying to light a roadway, what exactly does the driver need to see? Where are you putting light? Is there light that is causing veiling reflections in the eye and glare in the eye? Or does it allow you to see what you need to see? So I do think it's a complex question that involves not only spectrum, but really dose. And that's the amount, the distribution, the duration, right? And so I don't think you can answer these questions, any of these questions with spectrum alone. You really have to think about how that light is interacting with our retina.
Thanks. I am not sure if any of you can answer this. Maybe someone from the audience can. Do you know if the state of Hawaii or the city and county of Honolulu has any rules or regulations that states what the maximum CCT can be for outdoor lights?
I could tackle
Audience, yes.
it. For the state of Hawaii, the HRS, there's a requirement for state projects to be 4,000 K and below.
So the answer was state projects need to be 4,000 K and below.
That's correct.
And what about county?
There is no rules here about this.
2,000 and below.
No, there's no rules.
There's no rules.
There's no rule.
There's a shielding.
No rule for Hawaii or no
No,
rule
there's
for,
no rule on Oahu.
for what?
And I think anecdotally, or you probably all know better than me, I think there are no rules on Kauai, but there are invasive zones, and everyone behaves. At some level.
So this is an interesting question. The green lighting in the turtle's line of vision is troubling. What can we as lighting application designers do to help the heavy equipment industry in construction understand the negative effect on wildlife? That's construction lighting is something we haven't talked about enough.
I can say that that is a big concern. We had a construction project around by Makapu'u on the east side that was notorious for disorienting seabirds. And I know that our Fish and Wildlife Service law enforcement worked with the construction crew to try to get the lights off when they weren't being used and to try to think of ways to shield the lighting. But it is really difficult with construction work, right? Because they're typically using those big, bright, unshielded lights. So that's my 2 cents. I would be happy to, talk with construction crews or upcoming projects. We do that with the film industry. We try to work closely with the film industry because their lighting is also extremely disruptive.
Thanks. Another one, aimable floodlights and spotlights. I think this is speaking to the Luna program. Isn't that a desirable feature in order to avoid light beaming away from where you don't want it? We see a lot of products with adjustable beam angle distributions so that they can be directed where the light is wanted.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. So Luna is a prescriptive, right? It's at the fixture level and basically says, if you want an easy selection of products, you can look at these products. But in the very beginning of the technical requirements, we actually say there's other products that you might want to use that work, that can still mitigate light pollution. Work with a lighting designer to choose those products. Absolutely, you can use baffles and snoots and hoods and shields and everything to get the light where you want it to go and only graze the building or only graze your flag. But you're going to have to work with an expert, with a lighting designer to do that. So 100% we support going to lighting designers first. But if you're just looking for an easy prescriptive answer, that's what Luna is for. But it's not intended to be the only answer. So definitely agree.
Thanks. One more, and I'm not sure who this is for, but who do I talk to about the lights in my town? Richard, go talk to Richard.
That's what I did.
I don't know.
That's a really tough question. I know of someone, I don't know them by name, on the Big Island, who had a street light outside his house. He didn't like it. He went and shot it.
Yeah.
And every 3 months, they come and replace it. Next night, same thing happened. I'm not advocating that, but and I also say that you'll remember the copper thieves on H2. I was accused of stealing the copper to keep the lights down. So I'm a little bit of a hardcore, but my neighbor's lights drive me crazy. It is really, really hard. It's like trespass, other people's lights coming into your house. How do you talk to your neighbor? It's really, really hard. And I think in the end of the day, we're going to need some kind of regulation coming from the city or the county that says you shouldn't do that. And it's not, common sense doesn't seem to work. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, I'll just add that, I have in Albany, New York, I have the same issue with my neighbors. We have fireflies in the summer, which are amazing. And they're very sensitive to yellowish light, and we're losing fireflies really quickly. And they have no idea that their lights are on all night, and then it interferes with the fireflies. So I think it's unintentional. I honestly do. I don't think that I doubt that anyone's got this nefarious evil grin going on. They're like, oh, I'm gonna kill everything. I don't think that's true. I think people don't actually realize what's happening. I mean, I talked our Uber driver's ear off last night coming home from Waikiki, and he was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know. So he got the spiel too. But I would just say, just keep talking to people and help them understand. And to me, I think the most effective tools of engagement are dollars. This is going to save you money, right? Energy prices are high for everyone, not as high as yours, holy cow, but high. And also that, you're not missing out on anything, right? I think it's just, it's good. People, I think, want to do right. And especially they like to save cute, cuddly things like those shearwaters and baby turtles. I know, to me, that works. And just trying to be persuasive, and most people that I talk to have no idea that this is a problem because they're asleep. They know.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that with the turtle project, if we say like last year, we found a nest at Lani Kai and at Kailua, and I'm not sure what the mom turtle was thinking, but she went for it. And so we ended up having to engage with all the neighbors in the area about lighting. And what we found is that no one had a clue. The turtles are just starting to nest here on Oahu again. No, it's just not on anyone's radar. Nobody wants to kill a baby turtle. As someone who is a trained entomologist, it's wild to be working with turtles where everyone really wants to step up and help them. And, no one wants to have the media know that their lights killed, 50 baby turtles at night, or that a city and county light, caused a baby turtle to be eaten alive by fire ants. So my point just being that people just don't know. So let's talk to people. I'm going to talk to my city and council folks on the North Shore, my council folks on the North Shore. I think if we all do the same, we just need to increase awareness, however we can do it.
Okay, one more question, and we need sort of a quick response. What are your thoughts? And this is a big question, so my apologies. What are your thoughts on sports lighting?
I'll go first. I think sports, sports need a lot of light to see the ball going at high speeds. They need it for cameras. But turn it off when you're not in the field. Right? LEDs let you do that. I mean, the issue with old technologies like metal halide in the past is they had this issue with warm up and restrike, right? If those lights turned off, you had to cool down for 15 minutes, and then only then could it restrike, and it took a couple minutes for them to turn on to full power. LEDs don't work that way, right? They're instant on, instant off, they dim down. Take advantage of the technology we have. Use the lighting to meet the needs of the game, to meet the needs of the spectators and the players. But turn it off when there's no one there. I think that's an easy answer.
Yeah, as someone who spends a lot of time at the Waialua District Park, which has a big lit field and then has lit tennis courts, the field is lit up at night, and probably 75% of the time, no one is there. And I'm watching like a red-footed booby fly for hours around the cone. You know, so I agree. Let's just turn them off and shield the lights if we can, so that we're not blinded when we, you know, ride on the road by the park. Last night that happened to me. Like, just shield the lights so we're using as much light as we need, and we're lighting the areas we're using.
So, I mean, again, we're not trying to get people to turn off the lights and not do sports. But we urge that the lights are properly shielded. And if you have a sport that has fly balls, then use a direct uplight. So, like, don't spray the light everywhere. So Musco has LED lighting, but will do this properly without so much damage.
They've touched on all the responsibility issues on it. If you got an area sports lighting project, they actually have great energy savings as well. So if you are going for the contact Hawaii Energy, we'll be glad to help you. But we will help recommend some recommendations to be more responsible too.
It is, I want to thank the presenters again. I want to thank the audience for coming and spending your time on it.
Okay, I've got a quiz for all of our speakers. Would you be available for questions after? And really, would you encourage everybody to ask any and all questions of any Hawaii Energy person in this room?
Yes.
Yes.
We want to help. And we have at least 5 people over here, so please contact us.
So please, this is partial farewell, but ask questions, engage with these people. Terrific questions, terrific answers, and we will have follow-on webinars along these lines. Thank you very much, and you are partially dismissed until you talk to somebody else.